In conversation with Cale and Kolber. Cale and Kolber is an author from Trumbull, Connecticut. Throughout his whole life, he has played with the idea of a story and how important every component is. At a young age, before he could even read and write, he was creating stories by telling his mother what to write. Even though the stories, mostly about the angry bird, weren't good, they launched a basis for what he wanted to do with his life. Throughout middle school, while struggling with his dyslexia, he again would create stories, this time more about wartime, historical fiction. He even showed his eighth grade English teacher one of the stories. Let's just say it wasn't the most appropriate for his age. And the final story of his middle school tenure being science fiction. Hill went to high school with high hopes for his life, but then COVID-19 struck with nothing to do but sit around instead of playing video games and wasting away in his white walled basement. He wrote his first book, A Universe Discovery. His book propelled Cale to write three more in this series, for which he gained recognition and was awarded many academic awards, including the John Hopkins Book Award. Cale is now a student at Hofstra University, majoring in English with a concentration in creative writing, where he's still working on its many projects. And on today's episode of Author Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today, Cale and Kolber. How are you doing, Cale?
I'm doing great. It's beautiful here in Connecticut, really cold, but I'm doing amazing.
Yeah, it's so nice to connect with you. And I must say you have such a beautiful, fun bio. I love reading it. Quite exciting to know just things you've had in your young age. And we're finally here with you, author of lovely novels. Thanks for coming on, really.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, yeah. So can I need to first say that I was impressed reading to the description page of your book, Universe Discovery, What Mystery Lie in the Endless Void of the Universe, whose description page actually reads quite captivatingly to me. I would like to ask you the many obvious questions most authors get asked. What inspired you to write this book?
So I wrote this book during COVID-19, so it was during the lockdown time. So we were all stuck at home doing whatever we're doing. Most people play video games. Some people just sat there and waited for school to start. Personally, I found that as a waste of time, and I'm like, why don't I create a story? So I started writing Discovery in my basement, as my bio said. And at first it was supposed to be a one book series. And then I realized, hey, this could be three books, this could be four books, could be five, could be six. And then I landed on this might be six book series.
Mm,
And I came up with the idea of this book being that life can be okay. It doesn't have necessarily had ending, but an okay ending. That's why I figured out that inspired me. Because in that COVID-19 era,
yeah,
it was okay. At least for me, it was okay. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. I was just feeling okay. And I feel like it's better to feel okay than bad. So
yeah.
that's why writing the story meant a lot to me. Because because I want people to feel that, hey, stories can be okay. They don't have to be good. They don't have to be bad, but they can actually have an okay ending, and that's okay.
Oh well, I love your take on that. Sounds to me like a fun ride into becoming an author, more like a fun opening ride and a fun opening door into coming into the authorship room. Thank you so much for sharing. Love the sound of it. Yeah. And just for the sake of readers who haven't read the book yet, and without giving much information away, of course, could we have a sneak of what you had expect in terms of some of the overarching themes and subject lines picking up universe discovery and the genre it falls under too. I'd love you to talk about that.
So, the genre of the book is it's a science fiction military book, kind of. It's military. It's just like the first book isn't really military. It's more about finding discovery, as it is in the title. It's
Yeah.
about finding who you are. It's about finding a planet. Like the whole idea is about finding something. You can see this in the characters of the book of people developing from a bad person to a good person to a good person to a bad person. Some people going crazy, some people not going crazy. And it really shows that, hey, we're all different. We all need to find these discoveries, even in this whole aspect of space, that we all need to find what a discovery is to us. Because we're all different in a way. We all have that discovery inside us. Like for me, like discovering, I like to write. Hey, I'm doing it. I love it. We all love certain things. People love to read and they discovered that about themselves. So even though the book is science fiction and it's about discovering a planet, it's also about people discovering who they really are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love your take on that. Sounds to be quite amazing, really. Thank you for sharing. And I'd also like to ask you, how does dyslexia affect your ability to write and read your writing? I particularly like your answer to this.
So being dyslexic, reading is not easy. So do you know how sometimes like if you stare at something for too long, it like starts like moving around and you don't know why it's moving? Like if you stare at something. That's for me with like words. Like words like move around, they jiggle, and it's hard for me to catch them and pick them up.
Mm,
Luckily, over the past few years, I've been reading a lot of books to try to, I guess, fix myself. I can't be fixed, but like try to train myself to read better. And
mm,
I think that's shown because my writing has gotten a lot deeper and a lot better over time. I feel like it is difficult, but it's definitely easy to, or just it's not easy. It's definitely something I need to overcome if
yeah.
I want to be successful in this industry. And honestly, I feel like because I overcame it, I feel like I can do anything at this point. And I feel like anyone can do anything at this point,
Oh,
even if
wow.
even if they have a disability doing whatever they want. Hell, there was a one-handed baseball pitcher. Like if a guy with one hand could pitch a baseball, then anyone can do anything. And I kind of took inspiration from that. And it's like, hey, I can read and write, even if I can't read and write too well.
Mm. I love your take on that, really. It sounds to be quite lovely, quite fun, really. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. Thank you so much. Then you also have the follow-up series to the first series in the name of Universe Home. What is home? Which I particularly would say I like your choice of title names because they're quite compelling to me. Now, could you tell us about some of the overarching themes in that as well? And if you have a copy of the book, I'd like you to show to the camera just so we see what it looks like.
Yeah. So this is a universe home.
What is
It's
home?
the second book in the universe series. Basically, the whole idea, like the first book was about discovering yourself, discovering who you would be, who you want to be, who you could be. Home is about finding out what home really is. Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a thing? Who really knows? And that's the whole point of home is to find out what is home to you
Hmm.
with, of course, the overarching themes of, being chased down by enemies, trying to figure out what's happening with all these bad things happening. But the true essence of it is to figure out what is home. I mean, it literally says on the title, what is home? So that's
Yeah,
that's pretty much the whole thing is about finding out what is home and how the characters adapt to the situations.
yeah. That's a great one, really. That's a great one. Sounds to be quite fun. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. And okay, one of the most interesting things to me as a writer is to listen to readers' feedback. And you may want to argue with me that one of the things that make literature to be complex in its entirety is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers based on their opinions. And sometimes the readers might get a message intended by the author. Sometimes they might be close to getting the message. Sometimes they might be far from getting it. And sometimes they might hilariously misunderstand the message and interpret the book upside down. As interestingly fun as they sound, I would like to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your books differently than you intended? How does that make you feel?
Personally love it. So when people interpret the books in their own ways, I love it because it makes people think.
Yeah.
If people are thinking, then they can be creative in their own way. Like let's say you're reading like The Hunger Games or something like that, and you see that all this is happening in the book, and you're like, hey, actually, this is what I think this might be. Then that's perfect. Because if you're not thinking while you're reading, then you aren't really reading. Like the whole idea of reading is to open up your mind and find new stories, find new lands to go and to escape in and find a different ending.
Mm,
And if you interpret it in your own way, then that's a beautiful thing. And I just love it. I absolutely love it when readers do it because it makes it so attractive, so amazing, and it makes me feel very, very accomplished when I write a good book. It
yeah.
makes people think. I like when people think.
Yeah, I love your take on that. And I think it's actually a very fun experience, really, for authors to get to see what readers are saying quite differently from what they actually intended. And that's actually one of the things that makes literature or book club meeting, book conversation, to be quite interesting because we can read the same book and come together in a gathering of four, five, or six people to talk about the Red Book, and the way you would interpret it would differ entirely from the way I would interpret it, and would differ from the way the second person or the third or fourth person would interpret it, because we tend to interpret works based on our understanding, based on how we can relate to what the writer is saying, based on our own personal experiences. I mean, from our own interpretation. So it tends to give different meanings. And I think I love your take on that, really. I love your
Thank
take
you.
on
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And I like us to talk about your third book in the series. That's in the name of Universe Escape. What would it take to escape? Could you tell us briefly about the making of that as well without giving much information away? And if you have a copy, please show to the camera just so we see what it looks like.
So Universe Escape is the quote unquote third installment of the Universe series, mainly because I'm putting in air quotes because these two happen at the same time. Home and Escape happen at the same time. There's two different stories happening at the exact same time in two different parts of the world. This whole thing is about figuring out what escape actually is. Is it a physical thing? Is it your mental state? Is it just you trying to get out of the dark hole? See, people in today's world, we're all trapped in our own minds sometimes because we overthink about especially the media and the world and all that stuff. Escape is a book about someone trying to figure out who they are in a terrible situation. And once they figure out who they are, how to escape and get back to the people that they love. And I love writing this one. This is one of my favorite books because it's so many different aspects, so many different things that I've included in there that it just makes me feel so amazing. Even though it's about prison escape, there's a lot of mental stuff in there that I love about.
That's interesting, really. I love your take on that. Sounds to me to be quite wonderful, quite great. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. And I've always been fascinated. I like us to talk about inspirations and ideas because I'm always surprised by how authors, especially novelists like yourself, would sit down and craft long sentences and bring words together in a way that sentence makes paragraph and paragraph makes pages and pages make chapters and chapters coalition come together to make a great novel. And this always leaves me thinking, how exactly did they get the idea to bring these words together, to craft sentences that end up becoming paragraph, end up becoming pages, becoming chapters, and an amazing Uch novel like you've just shown to the camera initially, which was quite very voluminous, really. And as far as writing is concerned, I'd like to ask you, Kale, how exactly do you get your inspirations and ideas? Where did they come from?
So personally, whenever I get an idea, I like to think about the ending of the story first. I like to figure out how all my characters can get through the whole story and where I want them to be. Once I have that, I'll figure it out what I want the whole thing to end with. I start with the beginning. I go to the beginning of the book and I write down the baseline of who these guys are, what they want to do, and all that stuff. But then
Yeah.
we get into that middle part, and that middle part's the hardest part to get into because you're trying to figure out how to develop all of these characters into a final little area at the very back end of the book. And
Mm.
personally, writing all of this stuff is pretty much inspiring to myself because I am adding on to these stories. I am doing whatever I feel like I want to do with these stories. And that's a beautiful thing because writers like us, we can do whatever we want. We can write about whatever we want, whenever we want. And that is truly amazing. And that's inspiring in itself. Sure, people get inspiration from like other medias and other books and other movies. But personally, when I get inspired, I just like to sit down, think of a story that no one's ever thought of, and try to be the first to do it. And this is what I think a universe is. This is pretty much, I feel like the first kind of psychological, like science fiction book I could, or story I can really think of, because this is something so, what's the word? Something so interesting in itself, something so different that it just makes it inspiring. I
Oh,
just
I
love it.
love your take on that, really. I love your take on that because I think it's to different writers, it spans different ways. Got some people getting ideas from watching a movie. Yeah, like, oh, I see that movie and I got an inspiration to craft a story of it. Or we get some people getting ideas for book. After reading a book, they do not love the end of it or they are not satisfied with, oh, that book sucks. I can do better than that. Yeah, and we have many people get inspiration from, stories of friends, stories of family members, stories of their own personal life experiences, stories of what they've heard in the news, yeah, more particularly, yeah, There are several times that I particularly have loved to write a book of the stories I heard in the news, like to just make a fiction of it, because these stories are very heart-wrenching, ones that you find to be quite unbelievable, and you wanted to tell a tale around it to let people know that
Exactly.
is it's not supposed to, exist. Like stories that need to be served with justice, things like that. And hilarious, I've got some people also say, I get inspiration hilariously from the dreams that I have when I go to bed to sleep in the night. How hilarious that sounds, how different, how unbelievable, how diverse people tends to get information from. Even from mere conversation, I can get an inspiration to write a book from listening to a podcast or if dropping a conversation that doesn't belong to me.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. I just love it. I just love how people can write whenever they want. I think
honestly,
anyone can write. Anyone can write, I feel like, if they really wanted to. Because it's such a good form of media that we can create stories. It could be good, it could be bad stories, but it's just
yeah.
a good thing that anyone can do. And I just love it.
Some could even get from just sitting outside and staring at the nature, staring at the trees, staring at the birds creeping, the horse riding, whatever things, the wave of the ocean, etc. It's a whole lot of inspirations, source for writers, unimaginable, the weirdest of ways. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. And just apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
I am working on a horror novel. It's about a man in a top hat, and it's about like him trying to get his full power and all that stuff, and people trying to stop him. Like that whole idea is about, hey, again, there's an okay ending. There's not really a good ending, bad ending, just an okay ending. And that is okay. Having an okay ending is a-okay in this world. And I
Mm,
also have a fourth book published in this series, the Universe series called The Universe at War. Basically, it takes all the characters from the first three books and makes
wow.
six mini stories in here telling different aspects of war. One about the politics, one about the Air Force, one about the front lines, one about the special forces, and it's all about these different like short stories and how they all contribute in this whole fight for freedom and for justice. And
Mm,
I feel like that's probably the best book I've written because it takes everything and just mushes them together
mm,
and so many different people hitting each or not hitting each other, colliding with each other and doing their own little things. And I feel like that is just amazing in itself because there's so many different stories and so many different headlines in this book alone that can really inspire change to people. And I love change. I love making people feel like the world can be good. Because in
wow.
this world, people see it as a horoscope, but I feel like, hey, we could live in a good world if we all just try to live hard. Like we could all live at peace and all be together and all sing kumbaya. Like that's what I'm saying, man. I feel like we can all be good. And that's why I like writing. Because
Yeah.
books make good.
Oh,
Books can
wow.
be good.
I love your take on that. And it sounds to me like you've got a lot ongoing, really. Thanks for sharing. Thank
Of
you.
course.
Yeah. And now, before we wrap up, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? Are there any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing these books? And also, ever since it got published? And also, I'd like to ask you, too, as an addition, a question. How do you handle criticism as a writer?
So personally, I'm gonna start the criticism question first. Personally, when I get criticism, I don't take it. Well, wait, no. I take it. I take criticism. Don't worry. I take criticism, but I take it with a grain of salt. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if I'm writing something, I'm not doing it for other people. I'm writing for myself. And I love to write what I want to write. They can criticize all they want. They can say, hey, this was actually terrible, Kyle. And I'll be like, I don't really care. Look, I'm doing it for me, dude. I'm not really like saying, hey, I'm not gonna adjust my writing for the masses. I'm just gonna write what I want to write. And if people like it, people like it. If they don't, then they don't. And I've learned that you can't take criticism too hard. You gotta just take it, you gotta move on, you gotta be yourself, and you just gotta keep writing what you want to write. And that's what it's all about. Writing is writing, writing is writing. But being published, going to the publishing question now. Publishing, it is a hard place to be in. If you don't have the right resources, you won't be making a lot of money. So personally, I had a side job. My little contract just ended with them, so now I'm writing full time again.
Uh,
And personally, I feel like it's a hard place to get into. Definitely, there's a lot of resources out there, a lot of like little book clubs, a lot of like media sources. And my advice for people who want to get into publishing is to just do it. Drop whatever you're doing. If you want to write a book, write a book. Don't let anybody say no to you. Don't let anyone not get
Yeah,
in your way. Just go straight for it. If you have a story, if you have an idea, just go for it. Nothing should stop you, dude. Nothing should stop you. If your parents say, "Hey, that's not a real job, dude. It's not a real job. Don't write." Like, "Hey, yeah, it is. Have you heard of Shakespeare? He made money off this stuff. Have you heard of J.K. Rowling? She made a lot of money off this stuff. Keep
yeah,
writing, guys. Like it doesn't matter what people think." And
yeah.
I feel like that's my best advice for new writers. It's just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing, because it is a fun thing to do, and it's
Mhm.
really going to make a cultural impact.
Yeah, yeah. I love your take on that. That's a huge lot of advice you've got in there. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm hoping the viewers, even including myself, would love to utilize it. And now, Kale, just in case we have some viewers who are currently watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of any of your books. On what platform are they available on for purchase?
So my books are on Amazon. You can get the paperback or the Kindle versions. I believe the first three are still at Barnes and Nobles. I don't know if that's still there, but it might be. And of course, there's like all these like little websites you can get them at. If you can get it anywhere, even if it's from like a pirated site, if you want to get them. I really don't care. Read them. I love them. I love them. I want you to love them too.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's where you can get them.
yeah. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Kale Kolber book directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles on his website and also on other platforms. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Kale, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say this is more than awesome, quite exciting, very great having this conversation with you around the beautiful titles. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, thank you for having me. This was fun. I loved it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well, really.